They told him the building was empty. That's what James kept telling himself the first night he took the overnight cleaning job at the old municipal building on 3rd and Pine. He'd worked nights before, nothing like this, just the hum of fluorescent lights, the smell of floor polish, the click of the mop bucket. Simple, boring. Money was money. The building was a relic. Marble stairs, echoing corridors, heavy wooden doors that sighed when the wind pushed at them. They'd closed the public wing years ago. Only the administrative office stayed open for daytime. Nights, the place belonged to the rats and the janitors. James liked to take his time. He'd push his cart through the lobby and imagine the stories the old portraits would tell if they could move. At about 2 in the morning, he was working the 3rd floor offices when he heard a soft shuffle from down the hall. He paused with the mop in his hands and listened. The building swallowed sound, but that shuffle was distinct, like a small foot dragging on carpet. He told himself it was the HVAC. He kept working. Then the sound came again, closer, and this time there was a child's laugh. A high, quick little laugh, like someone watching a cartoon. James stopped dead. He hadn't heard a child in years, certainly not in a locked office building at 2 a.m. "Hello," he called, throat dry. His voice felt too loud. Silence answered, thick and flat. He walked toward the sound, the wheels of his cart squeaking. The lights overhead hummed, throwing harsh white onto the walls. At the far end of the corridor, the maintenance closet door, it was ajar. James pushed it open. It was empty. Mops, boxes of broken vacuum. No child, no toy, no small shoes. He told himself someone played a prank. Students maybe tagging the old building. He checked the cameras on his little phone. The company gave him a basic feed of 3 cameras to keep an eye on during the night. Everything looked normal. Empty hallways, a janitor's cart in the lobby. He went back to work but couldn't shake the sound. A few hours later, he was vacuuming the council chambers when the lights flickered. He froze. Something moved in the dark at the far end of the room. A pale blur, as if someone had walked between the lights. The old wooden podium creaked. James set the vacuum down and turned on his phone camera, zooming across the room. He whispered, "If this is a joke, that's not funny," and his voice trembled. When he watched the footage later that day at home, because he brought a recording habit with him, it made him feel less stupid. He saw something he still says he can't explain. In the video, the chamber is empty, chairs neat. The far door opens, and for 1 second, something small steps into the frame. It's not clear, just a darker shape, rounded at the top. It turns like a child might, a small head cocking, and a whisper of light crosses the floor like a reflection of laughter. And it's gone. The timestamp on the video shows 2:07 a.m. He went back the next night with another man, Carl, who insisted on coming along for his own paycheck. 2 pairs of eyes are better than 1, Carl said. They met in the lobby, both pretending not to be afraid. They split up to cover more ground. At about 1:30, Carl radios James. "You see this?" James hurried to the call. Carl was standing at the council chamber's doorway, face pale. He had his phone out, camera recording. "What did you see?" James asked. "Look." Carl flicked his phone toward the dark. The recorded frame showed the podium, the chairs, and the far wall. For a moment, a pale hand pressed against the glass of one of the old display cases along the wall. The hand was small, like a child's finger's blade. The wood creaked. Then, as if something decided not to be seen, the hand slid away and the room was empty again. They checked every room, every storage space, every vent. Nothing conclusive. No footprints, no toys, no sign a child had been there. The facility manager shrugged and said old buildings make old noises. The next week, James quit. He couldn't sleep. He kept thinking of the pale hand, the small laugh. He told himself he was being ridiculous. He'd worked nights in city buildings his whole life. Ghosts were for movies. 2 months later, James saw a news story about an old case. A family had moved into a duplex across town. Their daughter, 6 years old, wandered off one afternoon in late spring and never came home. They found no trace of her. The case went cold. On the local forum, someone posted a photograph from a garage sale, a small, cracked porcelain doll, left in a box with a handwritten note, found near 3rd and Pine, thrown behind a municipal building. The name on the police report matched the doll's owner. James called the number listed on the post because he needed to know. A woman picked up. She was quiet, and when he asked about the report, she said, "They never found her. We stopped looking years ago." Then she added, in a voice that broke, "My little girl used to laugh like that." He went back to the building one last time, after his shift this time during the day. The maintenance closet was locked now. The hallway smelled the way old buildings smell. Lemon cleaner, dust, something sweet underneath that felt like sugar gone to rot. He stood against the display case where he'd seen the hand on the recording, and he touched the glass. It was cool. For a moment, he swore he felt a small breath against his neck, like someone whispering just behind him. He never recorded again. He never worked nights in that building. But he kept one thing from the job. A small piece of paper he found in the cleaning cart drawer the night after the first laugh. It had crayon marks on it and a single childish scrawl. "I'm sorry." The edges were damp, as if it had been wiped with something. James still keeps it folded in his wallet. He says sometimes, late at night, he can hear a laugh, and it's the same laugh from the video, quick and bright and wrong. The last time James played that footage back, he slowed it down frame by frame. In one pause, the small shape that had stepped in a frame looked up at the camera. The face was not formed like a normal face. It had the suggestion of eyes, dark pits under a blue bruise of a forehead, and its mouth was a shadow as if stitched shut. Then it blinked. The file corruption ruined everything after that. The pixels stuttered and split, the timestamp warped, and the image went to black. When the video fell silent, there was a whisper on the audio track. It's faint, but clear when you put your ear close. "Don't leave me." James still sleeps with the light on. I got this one from friend of friend. Those are often the creepiest because the people telling them are close enough to be believable, but far enough away that you can't easily check the details. Her name was Maya. The story happened last winter, the kind of cold where your breath fogs in your car and you can hear the highway like a distant train. Maya was driving home from a late shift at the diner. The highway between her town and her apartment cuts through stretches of nothing, frozen fields and sparse trees. There are a few exits with gas stations, a closed motel on the left, an overpass that sounds like a drum when a truck goes over it. She was tired and the road was empty, which meant she could lean on the steering wheel, let the heat push against her face, and think about sleeping. She was about 15 minutes from her exit when she saw someone on the shoulder. A man, maybe mid-30s, thin, waving a flashlight. She swore she caught a glimpse of a red scarf. He looked cold. She slowed. He lifted his hand higher. Most people would keep going. Maya was raised to help. She pulled over. The man climbed into the front seat without saying much. He smelled like cigarettes and wet wool. He said his name was Paul and that his phone had died. He told a small, sensible story. His car battery died. His friend was supposed to pick him up, but the friend was late. He had cash. He only needed to get to the next exit. Maya said okay. They drove in silence for a few miles. He talked sometimes about nothing. A job he'd lost, a daughter he hadn't seen in a while. His voice was hoarse, but steady. At some point, they passed under the old overpass and a big truck roared by. The man flinched and touched his head like he'd been hurt. Maya glanced at him in the rear view and noticed his hands were trembling. She wanted to ask if he wanted to stop for coffee, but there was something small and off about him. He kept staring at the window like he was looking for someone. She dropped him at a dim exit near a cluster of houses. He thanked her and got out with his hands shoved into his coat. Maya watched him walk away, small under the sodium lights, and then she turned back on the highway, driving faster now, eager to sleep. She didn't notice right away that he'd left something in the back seat. A small book, like a child's library book, tucked between the seat and the door. She found it when she checked the car the next morning after realizing she'd lost her lucky lighter. The book was damp, pages softened, its title worn, Where the River Went. Inside, on the first page, there was a name written in faded ink, Paul Everett. She shrugged and dropped the book in her glove box. Later that day, at work, an old man came in and sat in her booth. He ordered coffee and asked after the news. Maya listened. He spoke quietly about his daughter. He'd lost his daughter years ago, he said, on that stretch of highway. They'd been driving, and she disappeared somehow between the rest stop and the overpass. No witnesses, no evidence, just a tire track and mud down by the river and nothing else. He said her name, Emily Everett. Something cold settled in Maya's stomach. She looked at the man's hands on the table, knuckles white, the way people hold onto a mug so it doesn't slide away. She thought about the book in her glove box. That night she sat in her car and pulled the book out. It was heavy with river scent dirt. Tucked inside was a loose photo, a Polaroid of a little girl in a red coat. Her hair was in a crooked braid. On the back, in the same faded ink, someone had written, Emily, age 6. There's also a note, folded small, call me if you know anything. Maya had to know. She called the number. A man answered, and his voice was older than she expected. He asked who she was. She said she'd picked up a man last night. There was a pause. The voice on the other end breathed out like someone who had been waiting. You picked up Paul? He asked. Yes. Is Emily okay? Maya asked, suddenly afraid she'd said something stupid. Silence. Then, Paul doesn't get out on roads, the man said slowly. Not since, well, he doesn't go anywhere. He told her a story that left her stomach dropping. Paul Everett had driven off that highway 5 years earlier. His car had been found at the riverbank, emptied, its door stuck open. No Paul, no footprints. The case was weird. The tide had been high, the mud smudged, and there had been reports later of someone waving a flashlight near the overpass. People assumed he ran. The daughter, Emily, had vanished from the same stretch years before that. The whispers in the small town tied things together in ways no one wanted to say out loud. Maya's hands went cold, but I dropped him off. I saw him, she said. The man listened, then said, You're the second person this week who said they gave Paul a ride. Folks around here are seeing things they can't explain. She drove to the spot the man described, the same place she dropped him off. The exit was quiet and slick with ice. The houses nearby had holiday lights up. Voices drifted from inside. She pulled into a turnout and sat. The cold crept through the car. In the darkness, the highway sounded like an animal breathing. She looked in her rear view and there was nothing on the shoulder, no figure with a red scarf. On her way home, she stopped by the river, where the police had once dredged and found nothing but a small shoe half buried in mud. The river was black and slow. She got out of the car and walked to the bank. The ground gave slightly under her boots. She called Emily's name out of some dumb, guilty hope. When she turned back to the road, she saw footprints in the mud leading from the river up toward the highway, irregular, like they had been made in a hurry. She followed them for a moment, and they disappeared at the edge of the road. There was no sign of a car, no tire marks, just footprints, and beyond them the asphalt swallowed the tracks. Maya kept the book for a long time. Once she noticed a smear on the front cover, like dried river water. Sometimes late at night, she'd reach into her glove box and touch the photo of the girl in the red coat. Once she swore she saw, in the little chrome visor mirror, a flash of movement, a thin hand, pale, at the edge of the back seat. When she turned, the car was empty. She stopped driving that route alone. She told herself she was tired, that headlights can trick you, that grief and small-town stories make people see ghosts. But the Polaroid stayed in her wallet until it faded, and sometimes when she washed the car, she found a small wet footprint on the passenger door handle, as if a tiny shoe had been set there after rain. One night, months later, she pulled out the book again and found a new piece of paper tucked between the pages. It hadn't been there before. In shaky, hurried handwriting, it said, "Thanks." No name, no return address, just the single word, and beneath it a smudge of red that might have been a scarf. The last thing Maya told me was this. She once drove past the overpass, and through the passenger window, she thought she saw someone standing on the shoulder, waving a flashlight. She pulled over before she could look. When she got out, the light on the road was empty. On the ground near the guardrail, there was a small, wet imprint, like a child's shoe, pressed into the mud. It looked fresh. She left it there and drove away. She says sometimes she hears a radio in the car turn on by itself, playing a song kids liked years ago. It stops when she looks in the mirror. She quit taking passengers after that. This last one came from a group message I'm still in, a neighborhood chat where people post lost pets and recommended plumbers. It started as a normal post. Anyone have recommendations for attic insulation? Then it veered into something far crazier. A woman named Claire wrote a bit later with a picture attached and a short, panicked message. Claire and her roommate had moved into an older house on the edge of town. It had been cheap for the area, high ceilings, creaky floors, good bones, the realtor had said. They loved it. It was the kind of house that made friends say, "It has character." The attic had a small hatch and a good amount of space with a single dusty window. They used it for boxes, old coats, and holiday decorations. One evening, Claire and her roommate, Jenna, heard tapping above them in the dead of night. At first it was faint, like a branch brushing the roof. Tapping at odd hours can be mice, they agreed. But the tapping kept coming, steady and patient, like someone tracing a mark in wood. Jenna, who was braver, climbed up the ladder to check. The attic was empty except for boxes, a trunk, and a small wooden table. The tapping stopped when she turned on the light, like the sound had been shy to be seen. They chalked it up to pipes and old nails. The next day, Claire found something else. Behind a stack of Christmas boxes, taped to a crate, was a sheet of paper, a child's drawing. Crayon lines made a thick, almost frantic house, stick figures in front of it, and at the bottom, in uneven letters, the date, tomorrow's date. Claire laughed uneasily. Maybe we just missed a kid knocking, she told Jenna, but the date bothered her. The night's tapping had been on Monday. The drawing said Tuesday. They burned it in the sink and threw the ashes away. The tapping came again 2 nights later, and this time it was accompanied by whispering voices Claire could feel more than hear. The kind of whispering borrowed from TV, where you think you hear a pattern but can't make out the words. They both lay awake and listened. The house sounded alive. Jenna said she'd go up and leave the attic light on until they fell asleep, to keep whatever it was from feeling unwelcome. That's when they noticed the drawings multiplied. Small sketches, the same style, slipped between pages of stored books tucked under sweaters. Each one had a different little scene. The living room with the couch in the corner, the kitchen table with a cup, a stick figure on the stairs. Each one had a date, different days in the same week counting down. None had names, just small, childish scrawl and shaky arrows pointing to places inside the house. By Friday, there was a drawing that made both of them so quiet they stopped breathing. It was a sketch of the bedroom. On the bed were 2 stick figures under a blanket. One was labeled Claire, the other Jenna. Below the bed, scribbled darker than the rest, was a small figure with a face that had no eyes, just 2 gone holes. Next to it, a time, 3:33 a.m., and at the bottom, the date, tomorrow. They took the drawings to the city police. The officer smiled like he did not believe in haunted attics. Kids play, he said. Neighbors' kids, maybe. Someone's idea of a prank. He suggested security cameras. They installed one small camera in the hallway outside their bedroom, cheap and simple. They set it to record nighttime. They watched the footage the next morning with lukewarm coffee and the same nervous adrenaline that comes from watching a tense movie you've already decided to be scared of. At 3:31 a.m., the footage showed the house lights dim. At 3:32, a faint rustle from the attic hatch. The hatch opened. Something small climbed down. Not a person, but something small, walking with short, quick feet, the camera unable to make out details. It crossed the hallway, paused at the bedroom door as if to check if anyone was awake, then slid under the bed. The image wavered like heat over asphalt. At 3:33, the camera's microphone caught a faint whisper. At 3:34, the small thing crawled back out and into the attic. The hatch closed on its own. They froze the video on a frame where the thing was halfway across the hallway. It looked like a small shadow with an outline too round at the head and too long at the arms. Claire's stomach dropped because in one frame, you could make out the absence where a face should be, 2 smooth blank ovals. The caption beneath the frame read, "Motion detected 3:33 a.m." They moved out that same day. They tried to tell themselves leaving was enough. They packed fast, not wanting to stay in a house that counted days with drawings. Still, Claire was persistent. She wanted to take the camera footage to a friend who worked in media, someone who could enhance the frames. Jenna said bring it. She needed answers. They uploaded the footage, and after some noise reduction and contrast adjustment, the small figure became slightly clearer. Not a child, not exactly. It had the proportions of a child, but the way its head bent looked wrong, like a hinge. Where the face should be, there were only smooth, pale planes. Claire slept at a friend's that night. Jenna stayed to finish the last box. At 3:33 a.m., Jenna's phone buzzed. She ignored it. It buzzed again insistently. She glanced. A text message came through from Claire. Don't look. Below that, another message. I saw something in my car. The timestamp on the phone said 3:33. Jenna, frozen, heard a scraping at the front door. She peeked through the curtains and saw nothing but the porch light and a black shape at the curb that could have been a tree branch. She rushed outside. Her car was there, headlights off. On the windshield, in something that looked like condensation but stuck oddly, was a new drawing. It was the outline of a bed. Within the bed was a stick figure labeled Jenna. Underneath, the date, tomorrow. The time, 3:33 a.m. They didn't wait to see if it matched. They left it on the curb and drove away with the trunk full of cardboard boxes rattling like teeth. They found a new place 3 towns over. The house was small and quiet. Life slowed. The drawings stopped for a while, and both women swore they never wanted to speak of attics again. But then one morning, Claire opened her desk drawer and found a tiny scrap of paper tucked behind a pen. On it, in tiny, careful letters, someone had drawn a little house. Inside the house was a tiny bed, and under the bed was a stick figure with no face. The date was the day after tomorrow. The time, 3:33 a.m. They called the police again, begged them to test the house for intruders, for environmental issues, for any rational explanation. The officers found no sign of forced entry. The locks worked. CCTV in the new neighborhood had no footage of anyone near their house at that time. Still, both women started locking their bedroom doors every night and sleeping with a light on. 1 week later, Claire's friend, the media guy who had enhanced the footage, sent a new file. He said he'd found something strange in the audio track when he isolated the moment of 3:33. If you listen slowly, he wrote, you could hear faint scratching, like someone dragging a pen across paper. Under that, barely audible, there was the whisper of a child counting, 1 and 3. The waveform had the shape of a human voice, but when he enhanced it, it stretched the sound until it became a slow, folding echo. The last syllable, distorted, came out like a scrape. 3. They moved again after that. You'd think moving would be overkill, but this is a story people tell when they really think something is wrong. They moved to an apartment in the city. Friends asked why they were so jumpy. Claire laughed it off, tried to make a joke, and then quietly took down the cheap camera from the hallway, wrapped it in bubble wrap, and put it in a closet. She kept one more thing from the old house. A single drawing that had been tucked into the back of a box they'd missed when packing. It looked at first like child's play, a house, 2 stick figures on a bed. In the corner, in careful printed letters, someone had added one more line, "We are hungry." That line didn't make sense. They had food and money. They had jobs. But the line crawled under Claire's skin the way cold water crawls under a door. She burned the drawing that night and scattered the ashes in the sink, watched them swirl down the drain as if trying to carry what was written away. A month later, Claire woke to a text message from Jenna. It was a single photo. The timestamp said 3:33 a.m. The photo was of Jenna's bed. Under the bed was darkness. A pair of small, pale hands were resting on the mattress edge, pressing up like something was trying to see over the side. The caption read, "It's under the bed. It knows the time." Claire says they never slept more than 2 hours at a time after that. They stopped going into attics. They taped up vents. They burned toys in a friend's backyard. They sold the cheap camera for parts. The neighborhood chat stopped about insulation and started posting other things. Doors that opened, toys moved from boxes, footprints only in dust. A year later, Claire posted a final note to the group. She said they had been doing okay. They had therapy. They had distance. They said maybe it was severe sleep paralysis, a shared psychosis, stress. Maybe. The last line of her post was short, like someone who didn't want witnesses. "If you ever find a drawing dated for tomorrow, don't stay to see if it happens." 3 nights after she posted that, someone in the same chat posted a photo of a small, folded piece of paper found in a secondhand chest at a yard sale. The picture showed a drawing of a bed with a stick figure under it. In the corner, in jagged pencil, someone had written, 3:33 a.m. Claire moved again. She changed her number. She keeps the curtains closed. Sometimes, when she walks past the children's section of a bookstore, she pauses. She looks at the paperbacks with their colorful spines and wonders how something small and childish could keep such a patient time. She never goes into attics. She never leaves the bedroom light off. That last drawing, the one she burned, still haunts her. She dreams sometimes that she peers under the bed and sees hundreds of tiny drawings, stacked like leaves, each with the same time. In the dream, the drawings whisper like moth wings, 333. She wakes with her heart pounding and a faint imprint of pencil on her palm. Which story scared you the most? Comment below and subscribe for more true horror stories.